Well, if you guys are able to actually see this and hear me, then the technology gods have shined brightly on me for this evening. Welcome, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on when you're watching this. Hopefully, it's right now. Good evening, as we're doing this live for the ThoroFan Virtual Trivia Night Breeders' Cup edition to try to get everybody a little bit into the Breeders' Cup spirit as we are kicking off all the festivities here. So, this should be a fun little evening. No prizes or anything like that, just some great Breeders' Cup trivia for everybody to hopefully get together and enjoy, test your wits, see how you do against other virtual players. And it's going to be a pretty simple format. So let's take a look at some of the rules that are going to be in play here. Basically, it's 3 rounds of 10 questions. After each round, we'll reveal the answers for everybody. You're on the honor system. You're scoring your own sheets, so you can Google stuff if you want, but try not to cheat. See what you know and don't know. Let us know your score in the comments, and I will be kind of behind the scenes here on the chat portion, monitoring everything and hopefully answering any questions that might come up. So while this is sort of live, I am not able to answer questions orally in real time. I'm just going to be basically doing it in the chat, provided all of this actually works as well as it should. So as I said, there's going to be 3 rounds, 10 questions. Some questions have multiple parts. And, we're going to kind of see how everybody does here as we get going on this trivia contest for the virtual Breeders' Cup topics. Round 1. Here we go. Question number 1. What year was the Breeders' Cup held? The first Breeders' Cup, I should say. What year was the first Breeders' Cup held? And what venue was it at? 1 point for each correct answer. Question number 2. The Breeders' Cup, the initial idea, was the brainchild of this man. Who was he? And of course, if you guys need to pause, to think about it a little bit and put your answer in, that's fine. Question number 3. What was the original purse now for the Breeders' Cup turf? How much green would those winners be taking home? Question number 4. How many different racetracks has the Breeders' Cup been held at? Now, obviously, each racetrack in this counts once. You don't need to name the tracks. You just need to go ahead and say how many, the total number. Question number 5. What year did the Breeders' Cup expand to a 2-day format, and what track hosted it in that year? 1 point for each correct answer. Question number 6. What was the first new race to be added to the traditional 7 races, and in what year was it introduced? So basically, what race made the traditional 7 races now become 8 races, and what was the first year we saw it? Question number 7. How many times has the Breeders' Cup been run on a synthetic surface instead of a traditional dirt surface? Question number 8. From 2008 to 2012, the Breeders' Cup distaff was renamed and was known by what name in those years before reverting back to the Breeders' Cup distaff? Question number 9. What track has hosted the Breeders' Cup the greatest number of times, and how many times have they hosted it? Once again, 1 point for each correct answer. Question number 10. How many races make up the current Breeders' Cup World Thoroughbred Championship? So over those 2 days, how many total races, or how many total Breeders' Cup races will be run? All right, round 1 is over. Let's check out some of the answers. So that first question, what year was the first Breeders' Cup held, and what track was it at? That would be 1984 at the no longer existent Hollywood Park in California. Question 2, who was the brainchild really of the Breeders' Cup? That would be none other than John Gaines. And his idea took a little persuasion to get over the finish line of that first year, as many people realize. Question number 3. What was the original purse for the Breeders' Cup Turf? Only a mere $2 million back then. Of course, if you had the winner in that first edition of the Breeders' Cup Turf, Lashkari, and you had a good wager on her, you might have gotten a little bit more than that. Question number 4. How many different racetracks has the Breeders' Cup been held at? 12 racetracks throughout North America. So Hollywood Park, Santa Anita, Del Mar, Keeneland, Gulfstream, Belmont, Churchill, Arlington, Woodbine, Lone Star, Monmouth, and the Big A. Question number 5. What year did the Breeders' Cup expand to that 2-day format? That would be in 2007, and the venue would have been Monmouth Park. And I can tell you, because I was there, it was not fun for a fan. We were in a monsoon for about 9/10 of that event, but still had fun nonetheless. My dad and I were out there enjoying our seats. Question number 6. What was the first new race to be added to the traditional 7-race card? And that was the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, with the initial running being won, of course, by Soaring Softly, 1999, at Gulfstream Park. Moving on. Question 7. How many times has the Breeders' Cup been on a synthetic surface, Polytrack? That was twice, actually, 2008 and 2009 at Santa Anita during California's kind of mandated experiment with synthetic racetracks at all of their racing facilities. Question number 8. What was the Breeders' Cup distaff known as? It was the Ladies' Classic, and I think a lot of us will say, ugh, what an absolutely horrible name. Thankfully, they listened to all of us after a couple of years and brought the name back of the distaff, which is really what it should have been all along. Question number 9. What track has hosted the Breeders' Cup the most times? That would be none other than the Great Race Place, Santa Anita Park, who has hosted it now 11 times. The only track to actually hold it 3 years in a row as well. Folks are probably going to be happy that the Breeders' Cup is now coming back to the East Coast after quite a while on the West Coast out there. Question 10. How many races make up the current Breeders' Cup World Thoroughbred Champions? 14 championship races, of course, Future Stars Friday with all the juvenile races, and a lot of the more major races, for some anyway, on Saturday. So 5 on Friday, 9 on Saturday, 14 total championship races to be contested over 2 great days of racing. So that's the first round of answers. We are now going to move on to round 2, and of course, as I said, anybody can kind of pause this and if they need to think a little bit more about a question. So question number 1 in round 2. What 4 stallions currently share the title of having sired the most Breeders' Cup winners? 1 point for each correct answer. 4 of them sit in a tie that might be broken this upcoming Breeders' Cup. Question number 2. What color were the original saddle towels for the original Breeders' Cup or inaugural Breeders' Cup in 1984? And then what color were they between 85 and 2008 before reverting to the traditional multicolored towels based on program numbers that we all see today? 1 point for each correct answer. Question number 3. Oh, the 1989 Breeders' Cup Classic, a true classic, probably the race of the decade. Who was first? Who was second in a match that nobody will forget who was there, who saw it, calling it, as Tom Durkin did, an epic. Question number 4. 2 trainers are now tied for the record of most Breeders' Cup wins. Who are they? 1 point for each correct answer. Question number 5. 2 female jockeys have won Breeders' Cup races on the flat, so we are not talking about the Breeders' Cup steeplechase here, which is around for a little bit. Who were they, and what horses did they ride to victory? 1 point for each correct answer. Kind of hard to believe that more female jockeys haven't won Breeders' Cup races. Question number 6. There has only been 1 dead heat for the win in the entire over 40-year history of the Breeders' Cup. What race was it? And what two horses were involved? 1 point for each correct answer. Question number 7. There actually were a couple of other Breeders' Cup races that were introduced and tried. 2 of them have since been discontinued. What were they? If you know this, you are a true Breeders' Cup guru, especially trying to remember one of them. So which 2 races no longer exist on the Breeders' Cup program? Question number 8, something I did not know until I was looking some stuff up. Really interesting. Who holds the distinction of being both the youngest jockey and youngest trainer to win a Breeders' Cup race? It's the same person. Who do you think it is? Question number 9. Which horse currently still holds the record for the largest winning margin in Breeders' Cup history? Who won by the biggest amount? Question number 10, going way back now. Who won the very first Breeders' Cup race ever run? Who won that inaugural race? And pencils down. Let's take a look at the answers. Question 1, which 4 stallions have sired the most winners? Well, it's a tie. Curlin, Into Mischief, Dubawi, and More Than Ready. Question number 2, what color were those saddle towels? Well, the initial ones in 84 were all yellow. Then from 85 to 2008, they took the iconic purple colors that everybody knows before reverting to the program numbers that we see today. Question 3, who were those top 2 finishers in the 89 Breeders' Cup Classic? Of course, it was Sunday Silence holding on over Easy Goer in the race of the decade that still stimulates debate today. Number 4, the 2 trainers that are tied for most wins. I didn't realize they were tied. The late, great Dwayne Lucas, and of course, Aidan O'Brien. And of course, if you are ever able to witness morning workouts, Breeders' Cup week, you definitely don't want to miss what is known as Aidan's Army, parading on the track in the early morning hours. Question number 5, the 2 female jockeys that have won Breeders' Cup races. Julie Crone, of course, on Half Bridled in the 2003 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, and Rosie Napravnik, who actually has 2 wins, Shanghai Bobby in the 2012 Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and Untappable in the 2014 Breeders' Cup Distaff. Rosie, of course, a great ambassador for aftercare as well, and Julie, great ambassador for the sport and jockeys everywhere. Number 6, what was the only race that had the dead heat for the win in the Breeders' Cup history? Truly an exciting race for anybody who saw it live. The 2003 Breeders' Cup Turf, and that, of course, was between High Chaparral and Johar. And everybody who was there and watching remembers how long it was before they finally declared that race a dead heat. I don't remember the exact minutes, but at least over 10 minutes they were waiting for the results of that photo. Number 7, which were the 2 races that were started, decided, and discontinued? That was the Breeders' Cup Marathon, seen here being won by the great fan favorite Kaleidoscopio, and the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Sprint. I tell you, if you have a chance to watch some of Kaleidoscopio's races, go back and watch, especially the Brooklyn. He was a mile behind the field before sweeping to victory in that race. Just truly amazing to watch. Question number 8, who holds the distinction of being both the youngest jockey and youngest trainer? Why, that would be Joseph O'Brien. As a jockey at age 18, he won on St. Nicholas Abbey for his dad in the Breeders' Cup Turf. And as a trainer, won the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf in 2019 with Iridessa. truly kind of an amazing feat when you consider how quickly he accomplished both of those feats as a horseman. Which horse holds the record for the largest winning margin in a Breeders' Cup history? Why, that would actually be inside information in the 1995 Breeders' Cup Distaff. 13.5 lengths, as Durkin said in the stretch, turned it into a runaway in the slop, besting her stablemate Heavenly Prize, who came on to be second. Sarita Song faded in that race after setting the pace. Number 10, who won that very first Breeders' Cup race ever won? Why, that was when a champion was crowned, and it was Chief's Crown, winner of the 1984 Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And that got Breeders' Cup Day 1984 off to a rousing start. The rest, as they say, is history. So that will end round 2. Hope you guys are still keeping score. Let's head on into round 3 and our final round of questions. So, question 1. What was the first year the post-time favorite won the Breeders' Cup Classic, and who was it? The Breeders' Cup Classic has seen some great upsets over the years. So we want to know if you know who the first post-time favorite was to actually win. Who was it? Question number 2. Who is or was the oldest trainer to win a Breeders' Cup race? Who holds that wonderful distinction? Question number 3. And for those that enjoy hunch plays or playing percentages, what is the winningest post position in Breeders' Cup history? Who is hoping for that lucky number draw that has the history of producing the most winners? Question number 4. 3 announcers have called the Breeders' Cup races on the network television broadcast, and that's an important point. So who are they? Who are the 3 announcers that have had the distinction of calling these great races for the network broadcasts? Not necessarily on track, but the network broadcasts. 1 point for each correct answer. Question number 5, and it's about 5 horses. 5 horses have won the Breeders' Cup Mile more than once. Who are they? You don't have to worry about the years, you just have to know the horses that won the Breeders' Cup Mile more than once. Or can, of course, pause this maybe a little bit, since we are doing this virtually, to think about it before moving on to the next question. But we want to know the 5 horses who have won the Breeders' Cup Mile more than once. Question number 6. 4 horses share the honor of being the oldest horses to run in a Breeders' Cup race at age 9. Who are they? It's a little bit of a hint earlier on in trivia that was going on this evening that will give you the answer of one of them, if you were really paying attention. But who are the 4 horses who share that distinction of running at the ripe old age of, well, for a racehorse anyway, still running, 9? Question number 7. After the United States, of course, who have the most winners, what country has bred the most Breeders' Cup winners? What other country is trailing by quite a bit, but still second to the U.S. in Breeders' Cup winners? Question number 8. Oh, we know that sprint is full of the fastest horses in the world a lot of times. So what horse holds the stakes record for the Breeders' Cup Sprint? What horse ran that 6 furlongs the fastest in over 40 years of runnings of the Breeders' Cup Sprint? Question number 9. What jockey has won the most Breeders' Cup races? This one's usually mentioned every year on the telecast, so if you pay attention, you should know the answer to this one. What jockey has the most Breeders' Cup wins? Has a cool moniker to his name, too. And question 10, who was the first female trainer to win a Breeders' Cup race? And with what horse did she do it? 1 point for each correct answer. So, who was the first female trainer to win a Breeders' Cup race, and what horse accomplished that feat for her? And that does it for all of the questions here on Breeders' Cup Virtual Trivia, brought to you by ThoroFan. But of course, we first have to go over the round 3 answers. Here they are. The first. What was the first year the post-time favorite won? That would be the 1987 Breeders' Cup Classic, when Ferdinand bested Ali Sheba when 2 Derby winners hit the wire together. Ferdinand was even money, 1-1, double your money, in that exciting Breeders' Cup Classic. Number 2, who is or was the oldest trainer to win a Breeders' Cup race? It's again none other than the late, great coach, D. Wayne Lucas, 79 years old, when Take Charge Brandy won the 2014 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. A lot of people think it was Charlie Whittingham when he won the aforementioned classic with Ferdinand, but no, D. Wayne Lucas with that upset win in the 2014 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. What is the post position you want to bet on if you want to play the percentages? Post position 4, but only by a whisker. 48 winners have come from post position 4, 47 winners have come from post position number 5. That is a neck-and-neck battle that probably will continue yet again over the years of the Breeders' Cup. Number 4, who were those 3 iconic announcers that have had the privilege of calling the races? Of course, Tom Durkin, Trevor Denman, and currently Larry Colmus. All 3 have taken the mic to call some of the most exciting and historic races in racing history. Question number 5, the 5 horses that have won the Breeders' Cup Mile more than once. They, of course, were Miesk in 87-88, Lure 92-93, Da Hoss 96, then one race, and 98, the greatest comeback ever for a racehorse in some people's minds. Goldakova, the only horse to win a Breeders' Cup race 3 times in a row, just an absolutely immortal filly when she accomplished that feat in 2010. And the most interesting horse in the world, Wise Dan, in 2012 and 2013. Of course, Lure, I believe it was his 93 win, was truly amazing when he did it breaking from that far outside post in a very short run to the first turn at Santa Anita. Question number 6, 4 horses share the honor of being the oldest, or at 9 years old. They were Cloudy's Night, the aforementioned Kaleidoscopio, John's Call, a real fan favorite, always showed up in big turf races, and Bet on Sunshine in the 2001 Breeders' Cup Sprint. Of course, Kaleidoscopio, the only one to actually win a Breeders' Cup race of that quartet, when he did take the aforementioned 2012 Breeders' Cup Marathon in that classic Silky Sullivan-like closing style. Number 7. After the United States, which country has bred the most winners? That would be, of course, the Emerald Isle, Ireland, with 41 winners, which is not too much of a shock considering the contingent that Aidan O'Brien brings over every year and the dominance as well with the Coolmore crew at the Breeders' Cup for certain races. Number 8. Which horse holds the stakes record? Who ran that Breeders' Cup Sprint the fastest? Midnight Loot. An amazing time, 1:07.08 in the 2008 Sprint at Santa Anita, and of course that was his second win in the Sprint in a row after romping home in the slop from an almost impossible position behind the rest of the field in the 2007 Sprint at the aforementioned Monsoon at Monmouth. Number 9, what jockey has won the most Breeders' Cup races? That would be none other than Mr. Money, Mike Smith. 27 wins, That will probably be eclipsed at some point, but considering Mike is showing no signs of slowing down, who knows how many more he'll amass, and if anybody will get close to him in the near future. But good old Money Mike Smith, 27 wins in Breeders' Cup races. And last but not least, question number 10, who was the first female trainer to win a Breeders' Cup race? That was Janine Sahadi with the gray blur in the stretch up at Woodbine, lead Justice in the 1996 Breeders' Cup Sprint, paving the way for many other female trainers to have winners in Breeders' Cup races. And Janine was the torchbearer who brought that first one home with lead to Justice. So that is it. 3 rounds, 10 questions each. How'd you do? So go ahead and score yourselves. Let us know how you did in the comments. We'll see if we've got any major winners. Again, you were on the honor system here, folks. So, try to be honest about it. Thanks so much for hanging out with us for a bit. I know it went a little bit quick, but we were having some technical difficulties, so we had to kind of shrink this down into a fittable format. But be sure to look for some exciting things coming from ThoroFan in the new year. Sign up for our newsletter at ThoroFan.com. You'll get some great handicapping tips, some great equine information, horse racing information made for you, the fan, by us, the fans. Really great thing to check out, and you'll really be exciting with some of the stuff that we have coming up for the new year that we are really super happy and thrilled to start showing you guys. So stay tuned for that. Everybody, enjoy the Breeders' Cup. May every horse and jockey have fair trips, safe trips, come back to the barn safe and sound. That is the most important thing. And as always, may all of your picks be winners. Thanks for joining us here for the first ever ThoroFan virtual Breeders' Cup Trivia Night. Hope everybody enjoyed this a little bit, and let us know how you did. Let us know how we can improve things, and we will probably be back at it next year.